Ever heard of a muscle car so rare that even collectors struggle to find one? These legends disappeared from history, and today we're uncovering their secrets. Here are the legendary models that vanished without a trace. Plymouth Superbird HEMI. The Superbird burst onto the scene in 1970, and man, was it a sight to behold. With that iconic pointed nose and massive rear wing, it looked like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. But this wasn't just a pretty face. Under the hood was a fire-breathing 7.0-liter V8 that could push this thing to over 200 miles per hour. Can you imagine flying down the highway in one of these monsters? Talk about an adrenaline rush. Can you picture yourself behind the wheel of a Plymouth Superbird, hitting the open road and leaving everyone in your dust? What do you think it must have felt like to experience that kind of raw power and performance? The thing is, the Superbird was only produced for the 1970 model year, and Plymouth only made around 1,900 of them. Why, you ask? Well, the story goes that NASCAR banned the crazy aerodynamic features that made the Superbird so legendary. Apparently, they were just a little too good at cutting through the air and leaving the competition in the dust, so Plymouth had to pull the plug. And just like that, the Superbird vanished. Do you think NASCAR was right to ban the Superbird's advanced aerodynamics? Or was it an unfair decision that robbed us of this incredible muscle car? But get this, that's not even the end of the Superbird's wild tale. See, these things were so rare and so sought after that their value just skyrocketed over the years. Nowadays, a pristine Superbird can fetch well over $1 million at auction. Can you believe that? A car that was built to dominate the racetrack is now a prized collectible that most of us can only dream of owning. What do you think about the Superbird's astronomical rise in value over the years? Is it crazy to see a car that was once a high-performance beast now commanding such astronomical prices? It's a shame these things disappeared so quickly, but I guess that's what makes the Superbird such a legendary, mysterious muscle car. One minute it was roaring down the track, the next, poof! Gone without a trace. But man, what a ride it must have been. What do you think was the biggest factor in the Superbird's sudden disappearance? Do you think it's a shame that such an iconic muscle car vanished so quickly? Let's see the reason for the disappearance of the next car on the list. 1970, Chevrolet Chevelle LS6. The Chevelle LS6. Now there was a real titan of the muscle car era. When this beast roared to life, you just knew it meant business. Under that long, sculpted hood sat a monstrous 454 cubic inch V8 that pumped out a jaw-dropping 450 horsepower. Can you even imagine the feeling of flooring the throttle and having all that raw power at your fingertips? It must have been like riding a rocket sled down the drag strip. Do you think muscle cars like the Chevelle LS6 represent the golden age of American automotive performance? Or were they just gas-guzzling, environmentally irresponsible relics of the past? But the LS6 was more than just a numbers-chasing muscle car. It had style for days. Those sweeping lines, the pronounced fenders, the aggressive stance. This thing just oozed attitude. You couldn't help but do a double take when one of these bad boys rumbled by. I bet if you closed your eyes and heard that thunderous exhaust note, you'd know it was a Chevelle LS6 from a mile away. So what made the LS6 so special, you ask? Well, for starters, Chevy only built around 4,400 of them in 1970 before the model was discontinued. That exclusivity alone makes them incredibly sought after today. But it wasn't just the rarity that did it. This car was an absolute monster on the streets and the drag strip. Do you think the limited production numbers of the Chevelle LS6 add to its mystique and desirability today? Or would you have preferred Chevy to build more of these legendary muscle cars back in the day? Let's have your thoughts in the comment section below. Imagine lining up at a red light next to an unsuspecting Honda Civic, revving that big block V8 and just leaving them in the dust when the light turned green. The look on their face would have been priceless. The LS6 could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds and blow through the quarter mile in the low 13-second range. That's supercar performance in a sleek, muscular package. Now I know what you're thinking. With all that power, The LS6 must have been a real handful to drive, right? Well, you'd be surprised. Chevy actually did a pretty impressive job of making this beast relatively user-friendly. Sure, the steering was heavy and the suspension was stiff, but the LS6 was still docile enough for everyday driving. It wasn't just a single-trick pony. You could cruise around town, then unleash the fury when you hit the open road. What do you think was the biggest challenge Chevy faced in making the Chevelle LS6 both powerful and drivable? Was it a successful compromise, or did they lean too far in one direction? Sadly, the LS6 Chevelle's reign was short-lived. After 1970, stricter emissions regulations and insurance costs meant the big block muscle cars started to disappear. But man, while it lasted, the LS6 was the stuff of automotive legend. If you were lucky enough to get your hands on one back in the day, you were truly riding in style. Talk about a muscle car that left an indelible mark on automotive history. Do you think the demise of the Chevelle LS6 and other big block muscle cars was a necessary evil due to environmental and safety concerns? Or was it a tragic loss for the industry and enthusiasts alike? The Torino King Cobra. I'm about to tell you the story of one wild ride, the Ford Torino King Cobra. Now, I know what you're thinking, the what now? But trust me, once you hear about this bad boy, you're gonna be on the hunt for one. See, the King Cobra was basically Ford's way of saying, hey, we can outmuscle the competition too. They took the already mean Torino, stuffed a big old 429 cubic inch V8 under the hood, slapped a supercharger on it, and then dialed the attitude up to 11. I'm talking about a giant hood scoop, flared fenders that could barely contain all that power, and a paint job that would make your eyes pop. This thing was the automotive equivalent of a heavyweight champ in a sparkly robe. Pure brawn and pure style, all in one package. What do you think was the most head-turning, in-your-face design element of the Torino King Cobra? Was it the massive hood scoop, the flared fenders, or something else entirely? But here's where the story gets really juicy. Ford only built about 300 King Cobras back in 1970 before they pulled the plug. Why, you ask? Well, rumor has it the suits at Ford HQ got a little nervous about how crazy this thing was. Apparently, they were worried the King Cobra would overshadow the rest of the Torino lineup. Can you believe that? Imagine being the marketing genius who decided to kill off one of the baddest muscle cars ever made. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Do you think Ford made a mistake by shutting down the Torino King Cobra program so quickly? Or was it a smart business decision to protect the rest of the Torino lineup? So just like that, poof, the King Cobra disappeared. But you know what they say, the rarer the ride, the more valuable it becomes. These days, a well-kept King Cobra can fetch over $1 million at auction. Crazy, right? A car that was practically shunned by its own maker is now the stuff of legend. What do you think accounts for the Torino King Cobra's skyrocketing value and legendary status today? Is it purely the rarity, or is there something more to its appeal? I gotta say, I can't help but wonder what might have been if Ford had just let the King Cobra off the leash. Imagine these things duking it out on the drag strips and street races of the 70s. It would have been an all-out automotive rumble. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. The King Cobra's time in the spotlight was fleeting, but its legacy as one of the most elusive and sought-after muscle cars lives on. Thank you for staying through till the end. What are your thoughts about these cars? Let's have your thoughts in the comments section.